Imagine this. You wake up feeling really sick, covered in strange dark spots, and a man wearing a bird-shaped mask says he can save you with leeches. Hey guys, tonight we're going back in time to a world where getting sick was scary, really scary, when medicine was mixed with faith, fear, and a lot of guessing. Forget doctors in white coats. Picture a dark room lit by candles, bottles filled with odd liquids, and a man in a long robe muttering prayers while holding a knife already used on someone else. Tonight, we're finding out what medieval doctors really did to cure people, and why most of their treatments hurt more than the sickness. Before we start, hit like and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy these quiet, strange trips through history. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. It's always amazing. People all over the world, sitting in the dark, listening to the past come alive again. Now turn off the lights, pull up your blanket, and get ready to go back to a time when people put their hope in herbs, prayers, and bleeding bowls. It's the year 1348. You've just made it through another winter, but something strange is spreading through town, and the doctor is already on his way. The air is cool, heavy with the smell of damp straw and smoke. Outside, a rooster crows somewhere between life and death. It's hard to tell which comes first here. You pull the coarse blanket tighter, listening to the world wake without you. Then comes the knock. 3 slow raps on the wooden door. Deliberate, practiced. The sound of someone who's done this before. The village doctor has arrived. He enters without invitation. A man wrapped in layers of wool and dust, carrying a satchel that looks older than his conscience. From it dangles a faint metallic rattle, the song of his trade. Knives, probes, and pewter bowls, clinking softly like chimes for the dying. He greets you with silence and the smell of vinegar. That's how he cleans his hands, not to kill germs, but to keep demons from clinging to his skin. He nods once, as though already diagnosing your sins. To him, your body isn't broken. It's imbalanced. The medieval world believes that every human being is governed by 4 invisible rivers flowing through the flesh. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The 4 humours, the sacred compass of health, mood, and morality. He explains it gently, as though you've never met yourself before. Too much blood makes a person passionate and foolish. Too much phlegm breeds laziness and melancholy. Yellow bile burns into anger. Black bile sinks into despair. Your health, he says, is a question of weather. You are a storm that must be balanced. A little too much heat, and the mind boils. A little too much cold, and the soul freezes in place. He unwraps a tiny parchment chart, circles of faded ink marked with zodiac signs. Each sign governs an organ. Aries for the head, Leo for the heart, Virgo for the gut. He checks the window, squinting at the grey sky. If the stars are wrong, even the right medicine can kill. He holds a candle near your face, watching how the flame flickers against your pupils. He studies the color of your lips, the dryness of your tongue. He asks what you dreamed last night. Dreams are diagnostics. If you saw water, phlegm is rising. If you saw blood, beware of fever. If you saw death, well, that one interprets itself. Next comes the water test. He takes a clay flask and waits as you fill it. The contents are lifted to the light, examined like holy relics. He murmurs to himself, comparing shades of yellow and brown against a parchment circle of urine colors. Too pale, you're weak. Too dark, you're inflamed. Cloudy with sediment, your soul is heavy with sin. He writes symbols you don't understand. Latin, mostly guesses dressed as wisdom. Then he feels your wrist, counting the pulse not for speed, but for character. A bounding pulse means heat, a sluggish one, cold. He nods solemnly, as though your heartbeat has confessed to a crime. Behind him, your family watches. They don't speak. No one interrupts a man communing with the body's mysteries. He dips a quill in ink, scratches something onto the back of a prayer sheet. Your diagnosis: an excess of blood and black bile. Passion curdled into sadness. He sighs. The balance must be restored. But restoring it requires release. Tomorrow morning, you'll be bled. Perhaps from the arm, perhaps the neck. He'll decide by the mood of the moon. He closes his satchel but lingers at your bedside. Doctors in this century are part healer, part priest, part gambler. He reminds you to confess before the bleeding, in case the imbalance lies deeper than flesh. Then he leaves a sprig of rosemary on the table, not for healing, for luck. When the door shuts, the room exhales. The candle trembles. You lie back, dizzy not from illness, but from the realization that this is medicine. And yet, in its strange, orderly poetry, there's comfort. Someone believes you can be fixed. Outside, the world still believes in miracles more than microbes. Fever is punishment. Pain is purification. And every doctor is a translator between God and the gut. As the night deepens, you imagine the rivers of your body shifting. Blood, bile, phlegm, all arguing in whispers beneath your ribs. You picture them like spirits, each demanding space. You wonder which of them will win by morning. Tomorrow will bring knives and cups and prayers. But for now, you close your eyes and listen to your pulse counting time, like a clock in another century. For the medieval mind, that sound isn't proof of life. It's proof that balance still fights to hold. They call this knowledge. We call it superstition. But maybe in their world, those words mean the same thing. Because what comes next isn't mercy, it's treatment. And in the Middle Ages, treatment means pain. Deliberate, holy pain. Morning arrives grey and reluctant. The kind of dawn that feels like it was dragged there, not born. Outside, a dog barks at nothing. Inside, your head throbs with a fever that feels older than you are. The door creaks open again. The doctor, punctual and heavy-footed. His robes are the same, but his expression has shifted from study to certainty. He has read your humours. Now, he will rebalance them. He lays his satchel on the table and opens it wide, revealing tools that catch the morning light like teeth, curved knives, thin tubes, small glass jars filled with moving shadows. It's not medicine, it's ritual. And like any ritual, it requires blood. He takes your wrist, feels for your pulse again, then turns to your family. You are strong, he says, but too full of heat. You almost laugh. You've never felt colder. He tightens a strip of cloth around your arm until your veins rise like river paths. Then he selects a knife. Not too sharp, not too dull. A blade that can open you just enough to let the sickness breathe. He murmurs a short prayer, half Latin, half hope. When he cuts, it's quick. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to remind you that healing has a price. Your blood wells dark and sluggish, pooling in the pewter bowl he holds beneath your hand. He watches it with fascination, as though it's speaking to him. The color, the smell, the way it runs, all signs. Too thick, and you're fevered. Too thin, and you're fading. He nods. Yes, the hot blood must go. He lets it drain slowly. Your vision narrows. The air thickens. Somewhere behind him, someone mutters a prayer you can't follow. When he finally releases the cloth, your arm feels like it belongs to someone else. He pours your blood into a clay pot and sets it by the window. If it darkens by evening, he says, the fever will break. If it doesn't, he'll take more tomorrow. But bloodletting is only the beginning. He wipes the blade, folds his cloth, and opens another jar. Inside something moves, slowly, wetly. Leeches, black, slick, alive. He calls them my silent helpers. He places one on your wrist. It twists, searching, then latches on. The bite stings, but the pain fades into a dull pool. A rhythm that feels almost tender. He adds another behind your ear, one more on your ankle. They cling like secrets you can't shake off. You watch the creatures swell, their bodies pulsing with your stolen heat. He smiles, content. They draw the poison, he says. In a way, he's right. But the poison isn't in your blood. It's in the logic that made this sound holy. When he's finished, he sprinkles salt over them. They detach one by one, dropping into the bowl with a soft slap. He wipes your skin clean with wine and whispers a blessing. The smell of iron and alcohol fills the air, a medieval perfume of mercy and fear. You ask him if it will work. He looks at you the way a priest looks at a confession. It already has, he says, because in this world, belief is half the cure. But not all imbalance leaves through blood. Some must be burned away. He takes a brass cup from his satchel, lights a candle, and holds the flame beneath the metal until it glows faintly red. Then he presses it to your back. The air leaves your lungs in a gasp. The cup seals against your skin, pulling it upward into a round dome. It's called cupping, a ritual meant to draw out evil vapors. What it draws instead is pain, sharp and clean. He moves the cup across your shoulders, leaving small bruised circles in its wake. Each mark is proof. Not that you're healed, but that you were treated. In the Middle Ages, that's enough. Sometimes, when the sickness runs deeper, he uses fire itself. He heats an iron rod until it glows, then presses it to the skin. Sealing wounds, killing infection, or branding away sin. The scream that follows is not weakness. It's participation. Pain is the price of purity, and purity is the only thing stronger than disease. Once the worst is over, he reaches for a mortar and pestle, crushed herbs, dried frogs, and a pinch of ground pearl. He adds wine, stirs, and lifts the concoction to your lips. Drink, he says. You hesitate. It smells like a graveyard in spring. But you drink. It burns, then numbs, then burns again. He nods, satisfied. He's done everything a man can do. The rest is up to God. Outside, the morning brightens. You lie still, dizzy, watching the shadows crawl across the wall. The leeches are gone, the knives are clean, and your blood sits in its pot, darkening by the window. Somewhere in another house, another patient screams. The doctor will go there next. Same ritual, same hope, same uncertainty. Each life is a coin flipped into the void. And he keeps flipping because to stop would be to admit he never had control at all. He gathers his tools, offers a final piece of advice. Avoid pork, bathe rarely, pray daily. Sleep facing east so your soul doesn't drift too far. He says it gently, as though he's passing down wisdom instead of folklore. When he leaves, the room smells of ash and wine. You can still see the faint marks the cups left on your back. Circles of proof, badges of survival. It hurts when you breathe, but you're alive. And that, in this age, is enough to call it healing. The truth is, most who were bled never recovered. Some faded by nightfall, their fever replaced by silence. But when they died, the doctor's faith remained untouched, because even death was a kind of cure. An ending meant the sickness was gone. Outside, the wind carries the faint smell of smoke. Another house burning incense for another patient. You close your eyes and imagine all of them, bleeding, praying, whispering their pain into a world that has no answers. And you realize something quietly devastating. They weren't cruel, they were trying. Every cut, every flame, every leech was an act of desperation disguised as knowledge. In their world, healing wasn't science, it was faith, fire, and fear, all braided into a single trembling hope that maybe, this time, the body would listen. When night falls again, you sleep fitfully, your dreams thick with the echo of chanting, the flicker of candles, and the rhythm of 1,000 other souls, trying to balance their humors in the dark. Tomorrow, you'll hear rumors of a new kind of cure. Not from the doctor, but from the apothecary, the keeper of powders, poisons, and miracles bottled in clay. And so we follow the scent of smoke and spice into the next room of this strange and desperate house of healing. The road to the apothecary smells of dust and rain. Cobblestones slick with morning dew led you toward a crooked door marked with a faded sign. A serpent coiled around a chalice, its paint cracked and flaking, like old skin. Inside, the air changes. It's warm and heavy, humming with quiet magic. Jars line every wall, rows upon rows of mysterious contents. Powders, dried flowers, tiny bones, cloudy liquids in green glass. It looks less like a shop and more like the inside of someone's imagination. The apothecary himself is part scientist, part sorcerer. His hands stained yellow from herbs, his nails rimmed with soot. He greets you with a nod. Not friendly, not cold. The kind of man who measures his words the way he measures his mixtures, precisely. He asks what ails you. You don't know where to begin, so you say what everyone says. Fever, a heaviness in the head. Strange dreams. He nods knowingly, as if he's heard the same confession 1,000 times. He will not cure your disease. He will negotiate with it. He begins with the mortar and pestle, stone against stone. A rhythmic grind that sounds almost like prayer. He adds a pinch of wormwood, bitter, cleansing. A measure of sage for purification. A sliver of mandrake root, pale and twisted like a screaming face. Mandrake is dangerous, he warns. Too little, and it does nothing. Too much, and you might meet God before the medicine takes effect. He mixes carefully, whispering small Latin words that are not quite spells, but not quite science either. When he's done, he spoons the powder into a cup of wine and slides it toward you. Drink this at sundown, he says. It will chase the fever through your dreams. You believe him, not because you trust him, but because the world gives you no one else to trust. Behind him, shelves groan under the weight of strange remedies. Crushed emeralds for plague resistance. Powdered mummy, imported from Egypt, believed to cure everything from arthritis to heartbreak. Dried frogs, theriac paste, ambergris, and bezoar stones carved from a goat's stomach. Each ingredient has a legend. Each legend is a currency. Some jars hold mercury, liquid silver that moves like thought. He uses it sparingly for the truly desperate. It eats through illness, he says, but it also eats through flesh. You nod, pretending to understand the difference. A young apprentice shuffles past you, carrying a tray of hot coals and glass flasks. The air smells of honey and rot. In the back room, metal clinks softly. The alchemist's chamber. That's where medicine becomes philosophy. You peek through the half-open door. There, in the dim light, another man works in silence. An alchemist, his hair silvered by candlelight, his eyes wide with obsession. On his table, a cracked skull, a feather, a burning crucible, and a book bound in leather too dark to name. He stirs a bubbling mixture with a glass rod, muttering calculations. He isn't trying to heal bodies. He's trying to heal nature itself. To him, sickness is just a symptom of the world's imbalance, and alchemy is the divine act of fixing it. He seeks what every alchemist seeks, the philosopher's stone, the substance that can turn base metal into gold and mortal flesh into immortality. To modern ears it sounds mad. To him, it's theology. He believes that God hid truth in symbols, that mercury represents the spirit, sulfur the soul, and salt the body. Mix them perfectly, and you recreate the divine. Healing, he says, is creation in miniature. He beckons you closer. Look, he whispers, pointing to the crucible. Inside, liquid metal shifts and hisses. See how it resists the flame, he says. That's what we must become, purified through fire. For a moment, you understand him. Not the science, but the longing. Because underneath all the rituals, all the superstition and smoke, there is one shared belief that suffering means something. That pain is not random. That if we can name it, mix it, measure it, we can control it. He pours the silver liquid into a small glass vial and hands it to you. For protection, he says, you slip it into your pocket, feeling its strange weight, somehow heavier than glass, lighter than reason. You thank him, but before you leave, your eyes catch a row of bottles labeled Aqua Vitae, water of life, distilled alcohol, clear as truth and twice as dangerous. The apothecary sells it for medicine, but he knows what it really is. Escape. You buy a small flask anyway. Just in case, you say. He smiles faintly. Every patient says that. Outside, the day has shifted to gold and shadow. You walk past beggars selling charms, priests waving incense, children chasing each other through puddles that smell faintly of wine and sewage. Everyone is curing something. Illness, fear, hunger, loneliness. It's all the same disease, just different symptoms. You stop by a fountain and sip from your flask. It burns like truth. For a moment, you feel lighter. Not healed exactly, but less afraid. And maybe that's all medicine ever really was. That night, you dream of the alchemist's fire. Gold turning to smoke, faces forming in the glass, the sound of the pestle grinding endlessly in the dark. You wake with a start sweat cooling on your skin, the vial of mercury still in your hand. You realize the line between doctor, apothecary, and alchemist is thinner than a strand of hair. All three are searching for the same thing, to make sense of pain, to turn it into meaning. And yet, for some, meaning isn't enough. Some want control, some want power, and some want to play God. You'll meet one of them soon. She's called many names: midwife, healer, witch. And her cures, though rooted in the same earth, come with a heavier price. Night falls again, soft and deliberate. A crescent moon hangs low over the fields, silver light slipping through the cracks of thatched roofs and into rooms filled with whispers. You follow those whispers, drawn to the smell of rosemary and smoke. At the edge of the village stands a small cottage. Its windows glow faintly amber, its garden overgrown with herbs and flowers you can't name. The air hums, not with chanting, but with life. You found her, the midwife, the healer, the woman they call, depending on who's speaking. A gift from God or a servant of the devil. She greets you without fear. Her hands are rough, her eyes sharp. Around her neck hangs a charm carved from rowan wood. For protection, she says, though you're not sure from what. Inside, bundles of sage and lavender hang from the rafters. Bowls of dried petals and crushed roots fill every corner. It smells of earth and smoke and something faintly sweet, like memory itself. She doesn't ask what you need. She already knows. The cough that won't go away, the bleeding that won't stop, the ache that isn't sickness but sorrow. She's seen them all. Her patients are the ones too poor for doctors, too proud for priests, and too desperate to wait for miracles. She takes your hand, presses 2 fingers against your wrist. Your pulse is strong, she murmurs, but your spirit is tired. You don't argue. It's the first diagnosis that feels true. She grinds herbs in a wooden bowl. Angelica, yarrow, and a pinch of mugwort. Drink this before sunrise, she says. It will calm the blood and ease the mind. The mixture tastes like rain and bitterness, but for the first time, you believe it might help. This is medicine without Latin, without charts or humours, without knives or fire. It's the kind learned from mothers that passed down quietly through generations of women who were never allowed to call themselves doctors. They heal with what the earth gives. Roots to lower fever, honey to seal wounds, garlic to fight infection, and touch, steady, deliberate, as if reminding the body that it's still worth holding together. But power, even the healing kind, rarely goes unpunished. The church grows uneasy with women like her. They call her herbs sorcery, her confidence pride, her success temptation. Rumors begin like embers, small, glowing, harmless at first. A villager claims she healed a cow by whispering to it. Another says she spoke to the dead. A third swears they saw her under the full moon, burying jars in the garden. By the time the priest hears of it, it's already afire. Soon, the same people who once came to her door with gratitude now come with stones in their hands. They call her witch. The word rolls off their tongues easily, as if it were always waiting for her. When the guards arrive, she doesn't run. She stands in her doorway, hands folded, eyes calm. They find her books, handwritten notes of herbs and remedies. To them, it's evidence. To her, it's knowledge. But knowledge, in this time, is dangerous if it doesn't belong to a man. They take her to the church square. Questions are shouted, none of which are meant to be answered. Who taught you these spells? Did you fly? Do you lie with the devil? She shakes her head, but every word of denial is treated as proof of guilt. When they find the charm around her neck, they hold it up to the crowd. This is witchcraft, the priest declares. She only smiles. It's protection, she says softly. But they've already decided what she is. Some are burned, some are drowned, some are forgotten. But all of them share the same sin. They knew how to heal. You hear stories whispered long after she's gone, of how her herbs still grow wild where her cottage stood, how her laughter can still be heard on stormy nights, how her remedies still work, though no one dares admit they use them. And in the years that follow, something strange happens. The same men who condemned her begin writing books about medicine, books filled with her knowledge. Only now it's called science. The word witch fades, replaced by midwife, then nurse, then healer again. But the echoes remain. A warning, a whisper, a reminder of what happens when compassion grows too powerful. You realize now that the line between miracle and heresy was never about what they did. It was about who did it. The doctor cuts, the apothecary mixes, the alchemist transforms, and the woman, she saves. Quietly, humbly, without permission. Somewhere, in the memory of the world, they are all still working. Every midwife who whispered a prayer over a newborn, every herbalist who treated a fever with honey instead of steel, every so-called witch who refused to stop healing, even when it cost her everything. The irony is cruel. Centuries later, we will rediscover her cures, her plants, her wisdom. We'll bottle them, sell them, call them natural remedies, and we'll never know her name. But if you listen closely, if you walk through the forests where her ashes fell, you might still smell sage and rosemary in the air, a quiet rebellion that never died. The age of witches ends, the age of plague begins, and with it, a new kind of doctor, one dressed not in robes, but in leather, with a mask shaped like a bird's skull, and eyes like glass. They call him the Plague Doctor. He walks through cities that smell of death, his cane tapping softly against cobblestones, his pockets full of herbs, vinegar, and fear. The year is 1348. You wake to silence, not peace, but absence. No birds, no carts, no voices in the street. The air feels thick, like it's holding its breath. Something has changed. You step outside. The village is still, except for the tolling of a single bell somewhere in the distance. Its sound rolls through the mist like a heartbeat for the dying. Smoke curls from chimneys, not from cooking, but from burning. The plague has arrived. They call it the Great Pestilence, the Black Death, God's punishment, the devil's breath, the end of the world wearing a crown of fleas. It came first with whispers, then with ships. And by the time the rumors became real, it was already too late. The first sign is the swelling. Painful lumps beneath the arms and between the legs, buboes, hot and black beneath the skin. Then fever, delirium, bleeding from the nose and mouth. Within days, the body collapses under its own weight. Within a week, the town forgets your name. The roads are lined with carts carrying the dead, drawn by men who no longer bother to cover their faces. Church bells toll until the ropes fray. Graveyards fill until the earth refuses to take more. And still, people keep dying. Into this world of rot and prayer steps a new figure. The Plague Doctor. He is unlike the physicians you've seen before. No humble robes, no gentle bedside. He wears a long leather coat, gloves, boots, and a mask shaped like a bird's skull. Glass lenses hide his eyes, and from the curved beak drifts the scent of herbs. Mint, camphor, rose petals, cloves. He looks like Death's apprentice. Inside the mask, he breathes through cloth soaked in vinegar, believing it will purify the air. For they think the plague travels not by flea or rat, but by miasma, the bad air that seeps from corpses and seen alike. He carries a cane, used not for walking, but for distance. With it, he lifts sheets, points at wounds, and checks pulses without touch. He no longer trusts skin. You watch as he moves from house to house, the leather of his coat creaking with each slow step. Behind him trails the smell of smoke and vinegar. Before him, the smell of death. Inside the first house, the walls are covered in prayers. In the bed lies a woman whose body looks more shadow than flesh. He kneels beside her, places a small posy of flowers on her chest, and whispers a prayer, not for her survival, but for his own. He lances a bubo with a red-hot needle. The room fills with a stench that no words can describe. He wipes his tools, not to clean them, but to perform the ritual of cleansing that his mind needs to keep working. The family watches in silence, hands clasped, lips cracked from fever. He tells them to burn rosemary, hang onions in the windows, and pray to Saint Roche. He says it as though it matters. Then he leaves. Another house, another body, another attempt to bargain with inevitability. Somewhere behind him, a priest drags a bell through the streets crying, "Bring out your dead." Dogs scatter. The living lock their doors, And for the first time, even faith starts to sound like fear. The doctor writes by candlelight that night. His journal trembles with exhaustion. He notes symptoms, times of death, treatments attempted. Leeches, ineffective, bloodletting, fatal. Burning the patient's clothes helps only the air smell less of despair. Still, he continues, because to stop would mean to face the truth, that he understands nothing. And yet, the people still call for him. They need to see someone who isn't afraid to enter the room, even if his courage is only made of leather and denial. He dreams of fire. He dreams of streets full of white ash instead of corpses. He dreams of silence that doesn't reek of grief. In his waking hours, he begins to believe strange things, that maybe the plague chooses its victims by smell, or by sin, or by the alignment of the stars. He tries astrological talismans, prayers written in blood, smoke from burning sulfur. Nothing changes. Death keeps walking beside him. By summer, half the town is gone. The air hums with flies. Cats and dogs are blamed and slaughtered. Bonfires of herbs line the streets. Men wear bouquets on their chests as armor against invisible poison. The doctor watches, silent, helpless, documenting the rituals of a dying civilization. But even here, there are moments of grace. A mother singing to her fevered child. A priest giving his last loaf of bread to a stranger. A gravedigger who crosses himself before every shovel of dirt. Life refusing to let death have the final word. The doctor begins to understand that healing might not always mean surviving. Sometimes it means staying human in the presence of horror. He keeps writing, not for medicine, but for memory. One day, he removes his mask. The air burns his throat, but he breathes anyway. For the first time, he looks at a dying patient with his own eyes. No glass between them, no barrier of superstition. Just two people, both terrified, both alive in the same brief moment. He holds her hand until her breathing stops. Then he closes her eyes and writes a single line in his book. Today, I remembered that she was not a case. She was a person. The plague would kill nearly half of Europe before it finally burned itself out. But it left behind something unexpected, doubt. For the first time, the doctors questioned the old texts. If the four humors could not explain this, what else might they be wrong about? From that doubt, something began to grow, slowly, quietly, like a seed pushing through ash. Observation, experiment, curiosity. The beginnings of modern medicine, born out of catastrophe. The plague doctor never lived to see it. Most didn't. But their masks, those strange, bird-like faces, became symbols of both fear and fascination. Centuries later, we'd hang them in museums, forgetting that behind every one was a man who trembled as much as the patients he tried to save. If you listen to the old journals, they still sound human. Letters written to wives who never read them. Records of failures kept in perfect handwriting. Each page an act of defiance. I was here. I tried. When you dream that night, you see him standing alone in the square, his beaked mask tilted toward the stars. Around him, the world burns quietly, and in the reflection of his glass eyes, you see yourself. The Black Death fades, but its shadow lingers, long and quiet, stretching across centuries. It will change how people pray, how they build cities, how they see the body, and how they see God. And out of that darkness will rise something new, places of learning, of care, of controlled suffering. The birth of the hospital. But mercy, like medicine, has a price. And not everyone inside those walls is there to be healed. The plague has passed, but the silence it leaves behind doesn't fade. It lingers in the air like dust, a quiet reminder that even survival feels like a kind of wound. The year is 1370. You stand before a massive stone building, its walls grey and damp, its door marked not with a cross, but with a word carved into the wood. Hospitale. In Latin, it means a place of hospitality, but inside you'll find more than rest. You'll find the first heartbeat of organized care, half sanctuary, half prison. The air smells of wax and prayer. Rows of beds line the long hall, each separated by a small curtain or nothing at all. Monks move between them, silent except for the soft rustle of robes. They carry bowls of broth, cups of water, and rosaries. Here, medicine is faith. You are not a patient. You're a soul in need of mercy. Every ache is a sin being burned away. Every fever a sermon from the body. A monk approaches your bed. His hands are calloused, his eyes kind but distant, as if he's seen too many deaths to keep count, but still refuses to look away. He places a damp cloth on your forehead and begins to pray under his breath. You ask what's in the broth he offers. He smiles faintly, mostly water, and hope. At night, the hall fills with whispers, some praying, some weeping, some begging God to let them die. The candles burn low, casting long shadows on the vaulted ceiling, as though the building itself is watching. This is not the hospital we know today. It's more monastery than medical ward, more chapel than science. The monks are healers of souls first, bodies second. They wash wounds with wine, set broken bones with faith, and record every death as a passing, never a failure. But not all who enter these walls are sick with fever. Some arrive carrying a different kind of illness, one no leech, herb, or prayer can reach. They call it madness. At first, the mad are treated like any other. They are fed, prayed over, given rest. But when the voices don't stop, when the screaming wakes the others, the monks begin to wonder, is this illness or possession? They bring in priests with relics and holy water. They recite psalms louder than the screams, believing that sound can drown out suffering. Sometimes it works, more often it doesn't. Soon, the hospitals begin building special rooms, small, dark cells at the end of the corridor. Here, those deemed lost to reason are kept apart. They are chained not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of what they might do, and fear of what they might reveal. That the mind, too, can bleed. You pass by one of those rooms. Inside, a woman rocks back and forth, murmuring to someone who isn't there. Her eyes are wild but bright, as if she's seeing something no one else can. A monk slides bread through a small gap in the door. No one speaks. In time, these rooms become entire wings. In time, these wings become buildings of their own. And the word, asylum, is born. At first, the idea is a mercy, a place to protect those who cannot protect themselves. But mercy, like medicine, is easily corrupted by fear. By the 15th century, chains grow thicker, cells grow smaller. The mad are not treated, they are displayed. Rich townsfolk pay to see them, to point, to pity, to assure themselves that they are still sane. They call it compassion. It looks a lot like cruelty, and yet, even here, in these places of suffering, there are glimpses of light. A nurse who hums lullabies through the door. A monk who sneaks extra bread. A patient who carves tiny crosses into the wall, believing each one keeps the darkness a little farther away. The line between medicine and morality begins to blur. People start asking dangerous questions. If madness isn't possession, then what is it? If illness isn't punishment, then who decides who deserves to heal? The monks begin keeping records. Not just prayers, but observations. How long the fevers last. What herbs ease pain. which patients recover and which do not. Knowledge, like mercy, spreads quietly. Out of these monasteries, the first true hospitals are born, places that combine care with curiosity. But even as medicine grows, its roots remain tangled in faith. Every cure is still a prayer. Every surgery still begins with a blessing. And the body, even in healing, is never truly free from the soul's shadow. You lie in your narrow bed, listening to the chanting echo through the hallways. It's beautiful, but there's something haunting beneath it, a sadness too deep for words. Maybe healing was never about science or sin. Maybe it was simply about being seen, being touched, being cared for, even when no one knew how. When dawn comes, the monks light new candles. The light moves across the patients' faces like forgiveness. For a brief moment, the hall feels holy again. But outside these walls, a new kind of healer is rising. One who no longer fears questions, who reads forbidden books, and who believes the body can be studied as carefully as the stars. They will challenge the monks. They will dissect what others dare not touch. And they will risk everything to understand what the medieval world still calls divine. The century turns. Europe breathes again, scarred, cautious, restless. The plague has passed, but it left behind something dangerous. Questions. Why did the prayers fail? Why did the holy water dry before the wounds did? Why did the righteous die beside the wicked? If God alone decides who lives and who dies, then what is a doctor but a witness to his silence? The monks still write, but the ink begins to tremble with curiosity. Somewhere in a candlelit cloister, a young scholar copies Galen's text by hand, the same Roman wisdom the church declared sacred. But this time, he doesn't just copy. He questions. He notices the mistakes, the contradictions. He wonders how Galen could have known the human heart. When dissection was forbidden, to cut the human body was to cut the boundary between divine and mortal. The body was sacred, a vessel for the soul, and to open it was to trespass on God's design. But curiosity, once awakened, does not go back to sleep. You find yourself in a university town, Bologna, Padua, or maybe Paris, where young men in heavy robes whisper Latin under their breath, carrying scrolls not of prayer, but of anatomy. In a locked room, beneath the echo of church bells, a candle burns over a table draped in linen. On it lies a body, cold, pale, anonymous. The scholar hesitates. He looks toward the crucifix on the wall, then toward the knife in his trembling hand. He whispers an apology to the soul and begins. The first cut is quiet. The second changes history. What spills out is not heresy, but truth. He finds muscles that Galen never mentioned, veins that flow in directions the ancients had reversed. He sees how the ribs cradle the lungs, how the heart pulses like a secret engine, how the body is not divine perfection, but astonishing machinery. He draws what he sees, hiding the sketches beneath the floorboards. For now, this is still a crime. But each forbidden drawing becomes a step away from superstition. Outside, the church grows uneasy. They build cathedrals from stone, but fear what's being built from knowledge. So they fight back the only way they know how, with relics, holy blood, saints' bones, vials of dust said to cure any sickness, if kissed in faith. Every town claims to have a miracle. Every monastery claims to have proof. A splinter from the true cross, a vial of Mary's milk, a thorn from Christ's crown. Pilgrims travel hundreds of miles to touch these relics, hoping their bodies will remember what belief feels like. Some are healed. Some die believing they were. But quietly, the scholars keep cutting. They begin to notice patterns. They begin to speak the language of veins and bones instead of sins and omens. And then, a name begins to spread in whispers. Andreas Vesalius, a young anatomist from Brussels, educated in Padua. Vesalius dared to say the unthinkable, that Galen was wrong. In 1543, he publishes De Humani Corporis Fabrica, on the fabric of the human body. 7 volumes of meticulous drawings, each line carved from observation, not obedience. His book is a revolution bound in leather. It shows muscles peeled back like curtains, bones rendered with mathematical precision, organs described without apology. For the first time, the body belongs to science. The church condemns it. Doctors fear it. But students hide copies beneath their robes, memorizing the truth like scripture. Medicine begins to awaken. The bleeding and purging still continue. But now, there are questions asked between each incision. What if balance isn't in the humors? What if disease comes from something else entirely? Some whisper of invisible seeds in the air, of rot that spreads not from sin, but from something too small to see. It will take centuries for those whispers to grow into the word bacteria, but it starts here. In candlelit rooms filled with ink and courage, still, faith is not gone. The doctor still prays before he cuts. The patient still holds a crucifix during surgery. Every drop of blood spilled is both experiment and confession. This uneasy marriage between faith and science will last for hundreds of years. Doctors will be both healers and heretics. Hospitals will hold both monks and anatomists. And every discovery will still come at a cost. Because the line between forbidden and divine has not vanished, it has simply moved deeper beneath the skin. Knowledge spreads faster than repentance. Universities grow, anatomical theatres open, amphitheatres where students gather in tiered rows to watch dissections as if attending mass. The cadaver lies at the centre, a teacher in death. And as the scalpel descends, a strange reverence fills the air. Not worship, but awe. The human body, once sacred and untouchable, becomes the map of creation itself. Every vein a river, every organ a mystery solved, every discovery a quiet rebellion against ignorance. But the more they learn, the more they realize how little they know. And for all their study of flesh, they cannot yet understand disease. Blood still spills. Patients still die. Doctors still guess. Only now they have charts to justify their failures. Science is rising. But suffering hasn't left. It never will. It simply changes its vocabulary. The 15th century closes with questions unanswered. The bleeding continues. The prayers persist. And in the dark corners of every apothecary and lecture hall, 2 forces keep circling each other, faith and reason, both claiming to heal. But on the horizon, something is stirring. A new sickness, a new fear, and a new kind of cure. It won't come from monks or scholars, but from the sea. Ships are sailing farther than ever before. And in their hulls, they carry not just gold and spices, but contagion. Soon, disease will cross oceans. Medicine will chase it, and both will change the world forever. The year is 1492. The world is getting bigger and smaller, all at once. Sails bloom across the horizon like pale ghosts. Men with compasses and prayers in their pockets leave familiar shores, convinced they're chasing glory, not realizing they're carrying death. The age of exploration has begun, and with it, the age of contagion. On board, the air is thick with salt, tar, and fear. The crew sleeps in damp quarters stacked like coffins, their food crawling with maggots, their water black with mold. Rats scurry over their blankets, fleas hitching rides unseen. They call it adventure. History will call it transmission. The sailors believe in saints and superstitions, not sanitation. They pray before storms, spit over the bow for luck, and whisper charms against scurvy, though none of them knows the word for it yet. When the gums begin to bleed, they blame curses. When the teeth loosen, they chew rope for strength. By the time they reach new lands, half the ship smells of rot and vinegar. But scurvy isn't divine punishment. It's absence. The body's slow collapse without vitamin C, a concept no one will understand for another 3 centuries. And yet, unknowingly, they sometimes cure it. When fresh fruit or fermented cabbage appears on deck, the men recover. The doctors call it a miracle. The cooks call it luck. Science calls it nutrition, but science hasn't caught up yet. Beyond the sea, new continents wait, each with their own medicines, their own healers, their own understanding of the body. In the Americas, indigenous healers use herbs, clay, and rituals that have worked for millennia. In Africa and Asia, plant medicine is already an art, holistic, refined, and respected. But when the Europeans arrive, they bring something else. Smallpox, measles, influenza, diseases carried not in barrels or chests, but in breath, in touch, in conquest. Entire civilizations fall in months. Bodies pile in temples. Villages vanish into silence. And still, the explorers call it providence. God clearing the land for their empires. The native healers do what they can. They grind roots, boil bark, burn herbs to cleanse the air. But their cures were never meant for European diseases. The invisible enemy moves faster than ritual can follow. Medicine becomes a weapon and a witness. The colonizers dismiss local healers as savages, then steal their remedies. They take quinine from the Andes, using it to treat malaria in the tropics. They take tobacco, claiming it cures plague and melancholy, and end up addicted instead. For every discovery, there is a theft. For every cure, a cost. But among the sickness and superstition, something extraordinary begins. Patterns emerge. Doctors notice how disease spreads through contact, how sailors infect port towns, how the sick can sicken the healthy. They still don't know why, but they've learned the first rule of epidemiology. Disease moves. Quarantines appear. Ships arriving from infected ports are ordered to wait 40 giorni, 40 days, before docking. The number comes from scripture, but the practice saves lives. Faith accidentally creates science, and yet fear spreads faster than wisdom. Sailors are shunned. Towns barricade their gates. Whole ships are burned at anchor. The sick are branded not as victims, but as warnings. Doctors wear amulets filled with herbs, still trusting scent over sense. And when the body count rises again, they turn to prayer. But not everyone accepts divine punishment as the answer. A new generation of physicians, travelers, thinkers, skeptics, begin to suspect that disease is natural, not moral. That the body can be studied, not judged. In London, Antwerp, and Amsterdam, medical journals begin circulating. Reports of symptoms, remedies, experiments. The world of healing becomes interconnected, like the trade routes that now girdle the globe. With the sea comes sickness. But with sickness comes information. By the 17th century, ships carry more than explorers. They carry doctors, men who catalogue what they see, who collect herbs and bones, who send back specimens to Europe that will reshape how we understand disease. One of them writes about a strange disease among milkmaids. Red sores on their hands, but immunity to smallpox. The observation passes quietly, like a seed buried too deep to sprout. It will take another 100 years for that seed to bloom into vaccination. For now, the doctors still bleed their patients. They still purge, burn, and pray. But for the first time, they are beginning to observe. Medicine is becoming a map, drawn from voyages, from wounds, from corpses, from courage. The explorers thought they were discovering new worlds. But what they really discovered was themselves, their fragility, their arrogance, their biology. Every ship returned home heavier, not with gold, but with proof that the human body, no matter where it is born, can be both destroyer and destroyed. In the centuries to come, medicine will grow bolder. It will step out of the shadows of faith, stand beneath the cold light of reason, and cut deeper than ever before. The Renaissance has begun. An age of art, anatomy, and arrogance, where flesh becomes fascination, and the pursuit of knowledge knows no boundary, not even death. The Renaissance begins not with trumpets, but with curiosity. After centuries of silence, Europe starts to look at the body again, not as a vessel for sin, but as a masterpiece worth studying. Painters, sculptors, physicians, they all chase the same thing now: truth. And for the first time in 1,000 years, truth has a face. It's made of muscle, bone, and blood. In Florence, in Milan, in candle-lit workshops filled with marble dust and ink, artists begin to open the human body to understand how God built it. Among them stands a man with paint-stained hands and an engineer's mind. Leonardo da Vinci. To the world, he's a painter. To himself, a scientist trapped in a poet's heart. In secret, he dissects corpses at night. By day, he paints angels. By night, he draws the veins beneath their wings. He fills hundreds of notebooks. The heart's chambers, the ear's spiral, the folds of a newborn's hand. Each drawing an act of reverence, not violation. He writes in mirrored script, so the church can't read his heresy. But his heresy is beautiful. Every sinew in motion, every shadow alive. He writes, the human foot is a masterpiece of engineering and a work of art. And in that sentence, the line between medicine and beauty vanishes. Across Europe, anatomy becomes performance. In Padua and Bologna, professors dissect bodies in stone theatres. The smell is unbearable. They burn orange peels, rosemary, and lavender. They call it learning. Some call it sacrilege. At the front stands the lecturer, spotless robes. He never touches the corpse. That belongs to the barber surgeon. He cuts while the scholar recites Galen. But slowly, observation replaces obedience. The body starts to tell its own story. From these dissections come discoveries. The heart is a pump. The liver, not passion's seat. The brain, perhaps the soul's home. Leonardo draws arteries like rivers, veins like vines. In his notebooks, science becomes poetry. He dies in 1519, notebook sealed, discoveries forgotten for a century. But others continue where he stopped. He dies in 1519, notebook sealed, discoveries forgotten for a century. But others continue where he stopped. Gone are the leeches and blind bleeding. Now there are scalpels, forceps, sutures, mercy shaped in steel. Medicine begins to look like art again, precise, deliberate, obsessed with proportion. Progress isn't mercy. The poor still die. Learning relies on the dead. Grave robbers rise to meet demand. Bodies stolen, sold under candlelight. The dead feed the living's hunger for understanding. Medicine grows from desecration. To heal life, you must touch death. Cities crowd, rivers foul, syphilis spreads. Doctors call it the Great Pox. The church calls it judgment. Mercury becomes the cure. It poisons more than it heals. But it's all they know. In palaces, kings rot behind velvet curtains. Art keeps painting beauty. Even as the world smells of decay, the Renaissance gives us anatomy, perspective, proportion, and the illusion that knowledge makes us immortal. You stand before a body laid open, beautiful, terrifying, honest. Somewhere a painter prays. Somewhere a doctor whispers thanks to the dead. The Renaissance taught medicine how to see, but seeing isn't understanding. It will take another revolution, born not in marble halls, but in filthy streets. The next great teacher won't be a philosopher or painter. It will be disease itself, a new plague of smoke and poverty. The world has changed again. The sound of prayers has been replaced by the grinding of gears. Smoke rises where steeples once did. The air smells not of incense but of iron. It's the 18th century. The dawn of industry, invention, and infection. Cities grow like tumors, spreading outward in soot and brick. The streets teem with bodies, working, coughing, surviving. Doctors no longer dress like priests. Their hands are stained with ink and coal dust. They're learning that sickness doesn't live in the soul. It lives in the streets. The Industrial Revolution promises progress, but it also brings something new, the modern disease. Typhus, tuberculosis, cholera, dysentery, plagues born not of sin, but of sewage. In London, the Thames becomes a liquid grave. Factories dump waste. Bodies are washed in the same water they drink. Children play beside it. And when cholera comes, it moves like a ghost through the pipes. Doctors don't understand it yet. They believe disease travels by miasma, bad air. Vinegar cloths, burning sulfur in the streets, fighting smell, not germs. And yet, in the chaos of filth and fear, there are thinkers who start to see patterns. Men with maps, notebooks, and an obsession with truth. In 1854, in Soho, London, John Snow notices something unusual. Cholera follows the water, not the wind. He walks house to house, marking every death on a map. When he draws the lines together, they converge on a single point. A public water pump on Broad Street. Snow removes the pump handle. The outbreak stops. And with that single act, the world's first map of contagion is drawn. He doesn't know it yet, but he has just proved the existence of germs without ever seeing one. Across Europe, Louis Pasteur peers into a microscope and watches invisible worlds come to life. Organisms that ferment wine, spoil milk, infect flesh. In his notebooks, he writes, "Chance favors the prepared mind, and chance, it seems, has chosen him." Pasteur proves disease comes from microscopic life. Germ theory shatters superstition. Disease is not a punishment, it's a process. In Germany, Robert Koch isolates tuberculosis and cholera. He stains them, photographs them, names them. He turns death into data. The doctor is no longer a mystic. He is a scientist, armed with lenses and logic. But while knowledge expands, so does inequality. Factories choke the poor. Tenements suffocate children. Doctors can name the diseases, but cannot stop them. The sickness isn't only biological, it's social. Medicine evolves toward the world around it. Not curing a man, saving a city. Edwin Chadwick and reformers. Clean water as cure. Pipes, drains, waste management. Dull words that save more lives than any potion. Public health is born not from miracles, but from plumbing. Meanwhile, in the countryside, another revolution begins. One that will change immunity itself. Edward Jenner notices milkmaids with cowpox never fall ill with smallpox. He scrapes fluid from a cowpox blister, injects a boy. The child sickens, then recovers. Exposed to smallpox later, the boy stays well. Crude, unethical by modern standards, but it works. Vaccination is born. The annihilation of smallpox must be the final result. He never sees it. Centuries later, the disease vanishes. The 19th century becomes the century of cleanliness. Soap, sanitation, vaccination, ventilation. Hospitals finally wash their hands, literally. In Vienna, Semmelweis sees mothers die when doctors come from autopsies to childbirth. Chlorinated lime. Death rates fall. They call him mad. He dies in an asylum. Later, genius. By mid-1800s, the hospital transforms. From despair to a cathedral of science, glass, tile, antiseptic, Joseph Lister sterilizes with carbolic acid. For the first time, patients survive surgery without rotting from infection. Cleanliness becomes divine, and yet, in every era of progress, death remains close. The poor still die quietly. The wealthy die slower. Medicine can't cure the human condition. The age of filth and fever ends not with a cure, but with understanding. Disease is not a demon. It's a mirror, showing what happens when we forget to care for each other. From the gutters of London to the fields of Gloucester, from microscopes to water pumps, we learn one truth over and over again. We are only as healthy as the world around us. The 20th century doesn't begin with peace. It begins with noise. Engines hum, guns roar, and nations believe they are invincible. The world has traded candles for electricity, but its appetite for destruction remains medieval. Doctors once studied the dead to learn about life. Now they will study the dying on the battlefield. It's 1914. Europe bursts into war, and medicine is dragged into the trenches. Surgeons trade marble floors for mud, scalpels for pocket knives, and clean linen for rags soaked in blood. The human body has never been so fragile, or so studied. Shells tear flesh in new ways. Gas burns lungs. Bullets splinter bones instead of piercing cleanly. Each wound demands invention. Doctors improvise with what they have. Whiskey for anesthesia, maggots for infection, hope for mercy. The trenches become hospitals of mud. Orderlies drag men through sludge, not to safety, but to science. Every amputation, every transfusion, every failed experiment, a lesson written in blood. In France, Marie Curie drives a van fitted with X-rays to the front. She teaches medics to find bullets before blind cutting kills more than it saves. Some call her the radiant angel. They don't know the price she'll pay for that light. War ends. Bodies are counted, millions gone. But medicine emerges transformed. Transfusions standardized. Plastic surgery begins from mercy, not vanity. Faces burned and shattered by shrapnel are rebuilt piece by piece. Harold Gillies becomes an architect of identity. They call them the men without faces. He gives them new ones. From war's wreckage rises something fragile. The idea that medicine can restore, not just repair. Then comes 1918. The war's ghost made flesh. Spanish flu spreads faster than bullets, killing more than the war. Hospitals overflow. Doctors wear gauze masks and prayers. No cure, no vaccine, just waiting. The world holds its breath and learns germs don't care who won. After, the microscope becomes the oracle. They hunt the invisible. Insulin, penicillin. First real power over death. 1928. Alexander Fleming returns to mold on dishes. Bacteria around it dead. Annoyance turns into discovery. It takes years to make medicine of it. Grow it, purify it, bottle it. By the next war, penicillin is the miracle weapon. Soldiers who would have died from gangrene now live. Surgeons clean wounds and watch them heal. For the first time, infection blinks, but progress has a shadow. With new power comes new arrogance. Medicine becomes industry. Hospitals turn into machines of order. White walls, numbers, charts. The white coat becomes a uniform of authority. Yet beneath the hum of machines, the ancient heartbeat of healing remains, echoing from monasteries, plague carts, anatomy halls. By mid-century, medicine moves faster than morality. Wars birth prosthetics. Labs birth cures. The first heart beats in a machine. Korea, Vietnam. operating tents under fire, triage, field surgery, rapid transfusions are perfected in war. When peace returns, those same techniques enter hospitals, changing emergency medicine forever. Anesthetics evolve from ether and chloroform to precise gases and IV drips. The patient no longer screams. The surgeon no longer guesses. The world believes it is mastering life. But medicine, like history, never moves in straight lines. 1945, the atom bomb falls. Doctors confront burns never seen, radiation sickness new and nameless. The power that lights hospitals also lights ruin. Science has split the atom, but the soul remains fractured. Amid horror, progress persists. Organ transplants, heart-lung machines, polio vaccines, ultrasound's first glimpse of life, age of blood and steel, of hope and hubris. Godlike tools, same ancient prayer. Please let them live. In white corridors, the line between miracle and experiment blurs. We can replace organs, not grief. Cure infection, not loneliness. The body is conquerable. The soul, still a mystery. Every breakthrough carries a ghost. Every cure, a cost. The history of healing is trial and error, of those who risked everything to understand what it means to be alive. By century's end, machines breathe for us. Tubes replace veins. A question whispers, are we saving lives or postponing death? The answer, as always, depends on who's asking. The century turns again. Hospitals hum like machines. Screens glow where candles once burned. The body has become data, a constellation of numbers, images, and probabilities. We can now see the invisible. CT scans, MRIs, PETs, the alphabet of modern medicine. They peel away skin, bone, and time, revealing the intimate architecture of existence. Doctors once guessed. Now they watch. The body glows like a galaxy in grayscale, each organ a planet with its own gravity. Diagnosis becomes astronomy. 1953, James Watson and Francis Crick announce DNA's structure. A spiral staircase written in 4 letters, ATCG, the code of life itself. Medicine gains a new language, not humors, but sequences. Life is chemistry. Death is a typo. Decades teach us to read, edit, copy, rewrite. Genes that once doomed families are understood, sometimes repaired. For the first time, we cure before we cut, predict before we suffer, prevent before we pray. If we can change the code of life, who decides what's normal? As the laboratories bloom, so do the shadows. Cloning, stem cells, designer babies. Medicine doesn't just save lives, it shapes them. And the old gods, fate, nature, death, begin to feel less eternal. 1996. A sheep named Dolly is cloned in Scotland. 6 years of life. Symbol, miracle, warning. If life can be copied, what makes it sacred? The line between healing and creation blurs. The doctor becomes an editor. The patient, a manuscript. Then, in 2020, the world stops. A small, familiar virus circles the planet in weeks. Hospitals overflow, cities fall quiet. The myth of modern invincibility dissolves. Isolation, fear, masks and prayers. Neighbors become strangers. Strangers become saviors. Miracles, vaccines in months, not decades. Doctors work to collapse. Machines breathe for the breathless. The pandemic becomes mirror and microscope, showing not just what kills us, but what connects us. After centuries of bloodletting and progress, we are still fragile, still searching, afraid of the dark, but better at lighting candles. Medicine is a conversation between human and machine, between faith and fact, between what can be done and what should be done. AI predicts disease before it manifests. Nanobots swim like microscopic surgeons. Organs grow in labs. Limbs are printed, hearts replaced, and some believe consciousness may soon be stored. For all the tech, truths remain. We are temporary. We are breakable. Every cure reveals another question. The stethoscope once listened to hearts. Now medicine listens to data, but the heartbeat hasn't changed. You are alive. For now, we stand where every advance forces reflection. How far should we go? When does healing become control? When does protection become fear? The hospital of the future hums like a cathedral. Sterile, silver, spotless. But the same prayers echo. Please let them wake. Please let it work. Please let it mean something. The story comes full circle. Herbs to steel to silicon. Myth to miracle to moral reckoning. The doctor's hand changes. From a medieval leechman's tremor to a robotic arm's precision. But the purpose is the same. Pull life back from the edge. Ancient healers whispered to spirits. Modern doctors whispered to machines. Both speak to something unseen. Healing was never just about the body. It's about defiance. Refusing to let the darkness have the last word. Medicine is not how we conquer death, but how we keep trying, knowing we never will. Maybe healing isn't victory. Maybe it's rebellion. Keeping the fire burning, even when the night returns. If you're still awake, breathe. Remember every hand that reached out. Every mother cooling a brow. Every doctor refusing to give up. Every healer who believed care was worth the cost. That's where medicine lives. Not in miracles, not in machines, but in the quiet moments where one human chooses compassion over indifference. From plague cards to pixels, herbs to holograms, the story remains. We break, we heal, we break again. And still, we keep trying. Morning breaks not with birds, but with artillery. A grey sun rises over Europe, and the world learns a new definition of pain. For centuries, medicine had crept forward in candlelight. Now it sprints through fire. The Great War begins, and for the first time, science and slaughter march in step. On the front lines, medicine is no longer a quiet art practiced in monasteries. It is chaos, improvised, desperate, brilliant chaos. In a muddy trench near the Somme, a soldier screams for a medic. He's 20 years old. He will live another 10 minutes unless someone gets to him. That's the new reality of healing, measured not in months or miracles, but in minutes. The medic runs with a satchel strapped across his chest. Inside are bandages, morphine, and scissors still stained from yesterday. There are no sterile wards here. Only mud, flies, and the roar of distant guns. He kneels beside the soldier and works without speaking. He's done this too many times. The leg is gone below the knee. The blood is dark, steady, arterial. He ties it off with cloth torn from a uniform, sprinkles iodine, injects morphine, and moves on. 1 man saved, 3 more calling. A day's work for a war doctor. Behind the front lines, tents rise like a city of suffering. They call them casualty clearing stations, half hospital, half hope. Nurses move between cots, white aprons streaked with brown and red. The surgeons work under flickering lamps. They no longer have time for ceremony, only precision. They invent new techniques because they have no choice. Shrapnel tears flesh differently than any wound before. Limbs explode instead of breaking. Faces disintegrate instead of bruising. Every injury is a new textbook, written in pain, studied in real time. From this horror, modern trauma surgery is born. Blood transfusions, once experimental, become standard practice. Mobile X-ray search bodies for shrapnel for the first time. Antiseptics are used in war zones to fight infection before it spreads. War teaches medicine lessons peace never could. Cruel, fast, unforgettable lessons. In the quiet between bombardments, they break. A surgeon wipes his hands and stares at his reflection in a bowl of red water. He saved 50 men this week and buried twice as many. The nurses write letters home for men with no hands. Some of them read the letters out loud. Some just hold the paper close to a mouth that can no longer speak. When the guns rest, the air hums with flies and ghosts. The hospital smells like iron and disinfectant. Medicine and death have finally learned to share the same room. By the Second World War, the doctors have better tools, but the same impossible task. Now the wounds are not just physical. Shell shock, the invisible injury, sweeps through the ranks. Men who look unhurt can't stop shaking. They wake screaming from dreams they can't describe. Psychiatry enters the battlefield, armed with notebooks instead of knives. But nobody knows how to treat trauma that doesn't bleed. Yet even here, in the ruins, progress grows. Antibiotics arrive. Penicillin, discovered by accident, mass-produced by war. A mold becomes a miracle. Blood banks emerge. Refrigerators full of possibility. Plasma saves thousands. And surgery evolves again. Field hospitals, sterilized equipment, anesthesia refined under pressure. In the Pacific, doctors learn to graft skin. In Britain, pioneers rebuild shattered faces. Plastic surgery, born of horror, becomes a craft of compassion. The battlefield surgeon becomes the architect of second chances. And yet, each new discovery smells faintly of gunpowder. After the wars, medicine faces a new kind of wound, the moral one. Doctors who saved lives also designed ways to end them faster. The Nuremberg trials draw it again, painfully, permanently. From the ashes, modern medical ethics rise. Consent, dignity, humanity. Prosthetics evolve. Once wooden and crude, now mechanical and lifelike. Rehabilitation emerges as its own art form. The doctor is no longer just a surgeon or a scientist. He becomes a craftsman of survival, a maker of hope. Now the hospitals are quieter. Steel replaces mud. Scalpels replace bayonets. But the echoes remain. The war doctors taught us that medicine is not peace. It is resistance. Every suture, every bandage, every breath given back is an act of rebellion against the world's tendency to destroy itself. In the flicker of fluorescent light, a surgeon closes the final stitch of the day. The room hums with machines instead of mortars. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he can still hear the faint echo of the battlefield, a reminder that every modern miracle was once born in a trench, and that behind every cure is someone who learned it the hard way. Morning breaks clean, too clean. No gunfire, no blood, no trench, just a glass slide, a droplet, and a man staring through a lens at something that shouldn't exist. And yet, it moves. The war has changed. This one is fought in silence. No uniforms, no front lines, just petri dishes and fever charts, hands trembling over microscopes like priests at a new altar. Louis Pasteur leans over his microscope, watching life and death wrestle on a pinhead. He was a chemist once. Now he's a prophet of purity. He watches spoiled wine, rotting silk, dying children, and sees the same invisible pattern. Germs. Tiny assassins, unseen but everywhere. People call him crazy. They say disease is punishment, miasma, bad air. But Pasteur proves that sickness has a face, even if it's too small to see. He boils his instruments, sterilizes his tools, and whispers a prayer not to God, but to reason. And slowly, the world listens. Next comes Joseph Lister, a surgeon haunted by the smell of rot in hospital halls. He reads Pasteur's papers and feels something shift. He begins washing his hands in carbolic acid, wiping his knives, cleaning his wounds like a man possessed. His colleagues laugh. Why wash invisible sins, they ask. But the laughter fades when his patients stop dying. A quiet revolution begins. The birth of antiseptic surgery in the small, flickering light of 19th century labs. Another figure appears, Robert Koch. He isolates the killers behind anthrax, tuberculosis, cholera. He stains them, photographs them, names them like devils in a spellbook. Each discovery feels like a small exorcism. Every germ identified is a ghost unmasked. The microscope becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. Meanwhile, in country towns and quiet villages, a humbler miracle brews. Edward Jenner, a country doctor with more patience than pride, notices something peculiar. Milkmaids who survive smallpox without a mark. He scrapes a lesion from a milkmaid's hand, inoculates a boy, and waits. The boy grows sick, then well. Later, Jenner exposes him to smallpox. The boy stays well. The world doesn't believe it yet, but the first vaccine has been born. The idea spreads slowly. From Britain to Europe, across oceans and empires, doctors carry vaccine threads sewn into cloth, sealed in vials, passed like contraband hope. Children line up with sleeves rolled, tears mixing with prayers, and the old world of plagues and panic starts to crumble beneath the weight of a needle. By the late 1800s, the invisible world is no longer unknown. It's illuminated. Hospitals scrub their floors. Doctors sterilize their tools. Soap becomes salvation. And then, just as the world breathes easier, a new whisper rises. Virus. Unlike bacteria, viruses aren't alive. They're fragments of code, tiny parasites that hijack life itself. The Spanish flu arrives in 1918. Silent, swift, merciless. It infects 1/3 of the planet. Doctors wear masks and pray behind closed doors. Cities lock their gates. For the first time, the world learns what a global pandemic feels like. And in that terror, a strange unity is born. Medicine is no longer local, it's global. Through the decades, science strikes back. Polio, rabies, measles, yellow fever. Each met with a needle, each answered with courage. Jonas Salk gives the world the polio vaccine and refuses to patent it. When asked who owns it, he says, the people. Could you patent the sun? But the war against the unseen never ends. In the 1980s, HIV emerges. A virus that destroys the body's defenses and carries a heavier shadow. Shame. Doctors fight for research. Nurses hold the dying, and activists chain themselves to hospital doors. The lesson repeats. A disease is not just biological, it's human. Smallpox, the ancient killer, falls first. In 1980, it is declared eradicated, the first human disease to ever vanish. But behind every victory is a warning. Nature adapts. Microbes evolve. Complacency kills faster than infection. Now, the wars are waged in labs of glass and steel. Researchers in white coats, sequencing genomes, predicting outbreaks before they begin. The weapons are vaccines, antivirals, algorithms. The battlegrounds, airports, markets, hospitals, and sometimes our own hesitation to trust the cure. Then comes the 21st century. Ebola, SARS, H1N1, COVID-19. Names that echo like old prayers rewritten for modern fear. Doctors wear armor made of fabric and plastic. They speak through masks, touch through gloves, and still find ways to comfort with their eyes. Every pandemic revives the same questions. Who deserves care? Who gets the cure? What is the cost of safety? Survival is not just medical, it's moral. Now, in sterile rooms glowing blue with LED light, a scientist holds a vial no bigger than a tear. Inside it, the memory of a virus, the promise of immunity. The invisible wars continue, in labs, in lungs, in the shared breath between strangers on a train. Some wars end in treaties. This one never will. And when it comes again, someone will be ready. A scientist, a doctor, a child with a sleeve rolled up and a world behind her, ready to believe again in the smallest form of hope. Night falls on the hospital. Not the kind filled with blood and broken bones, but one filled with whispers, with trembling hands, eyes that won't meet yours, and screams muffled behind linen doors. Night falls on the hospital. Not the kind filled with blood and broken bones, but one filled with whispers, with trembling hands, eyes that won't meet yours, and screams muffled behind linen doors. Medicine has conquered infection, tamed fever, rebuilt faces, but one battlefield remains unconquered: the mind. For most of history, the mind was not an organ. It was a haunting. Madness was a punishment, a divine correction, a reminder that some souls were born closer to hell than to reason. The mad were chained, mocked, feared, forgotten, locked away in cold stone rooms called asylums, from the Greek, a place of refuge. But the walls told a different story. Refuge rarely feels like restraint. In the 18th and 19th centuries, cities began hiding their broken minds behind iron gates. St. Mary of Bethlehem in London, Bedlam, became both a hospital and a spectacle. The public could buy tickets to watch the patients, a twisted theatre of suffering where laughter drowned out the cries. The doctors called it observation. The people called it entertainment. But amid the cruelty, a few voices began to whisper of mercy. Philippe Pinel, in revolutionary France, walked through the asylums and cut the chains. "These are not beasts," he said. "They are suffering men and women." It was a small moment, but it rippled through centuries. The birth of psychiatry wasn't loud. It was an act of kindness. As the world industrialized, science turned its gaze inward, toward the invisible machinery of the mind. Sigmund Freud believed so. In his dark Vienna study, he turned confession into a method. No knives, no needles, only talk. Freud's patients lay on couches, recounting dreams of staircases and mothers, fears and forbidden desires. He mapped their words like constellations, but not everyone had the luxury of talk. Hospitals filled with patients who refused to eat, who screamed at voices that weren't there, who forgot their own names. One involved injecting patients with insulin until they slipped into a coma. The shock, doctors claimed, would reset the mind. Another method used electricity, electroconvulsive therapy, a surge through the skull. Memory wiped clean like a chalkboard. It was crude, terrifying, but sometimes mercifully, it worked. People lost in despair came back blinking, confused, alive. In 1935, Antonio Egas Moniz introduced a new procedure: the lobotomy, a small cut between the eye and the brain. Dr. Walter Freeman performed thousands. He carried his own ice pick, sometimes in a van, a traveling roadshow of horror and hope. Patients, once violent, grew calm. Families wept in gratitude, but the price was everything that made them human. Patients walked out, blinking into sunlight they hadn't seen in decades. Deinstitutionalization, the end of confinement. But freedom has its own cruelty. Many found no homes, no help, only city streets and forgotten names. Neuroscience rose from psychiatry's ashes. Biology blending with empathy, chemistry with compassion. The brain was no longer mystery, just a machine made of miracles. But the soul still refused to cooperate. Depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, PTSD, a lexicon of invisible wars, each fought in silence. Therapists and scientists turned to psychedelics, psilocybin, guided visions of light and grief dissolving like salt in water. Psychiatry today stands between data and dreams, between neural networks and nightmares. In a small office, a therapist sits across from a patient. No restraints, no electrodes, just two people talking. The mind, once dissected and doubted, has found its own kind of medicine, understanding. Maybe that's the truest cure of all. It begins, as all revolutions do, with something small. So small it doesn't even have a name. Just a shape, a spiral. A twist of possibility coiled tighter than thought itself. This is the story of how we learn to read life. For centuries, medicine worked by sight. Doctors studied what they could see. The pulse, the wound, the fever, the blood. But what if the true map of life was invisible? Hidden in every cell, every breath, every inheritance passed down, like a whispered secret through time. In 1953, two men, James Watson and Francis Crick, sit in a small Cambridge pub. They're drunk on discovery, not beer. They found it. The double helix, the structure of DNA. 4 letters, A, T, G, and C, combine into the entire vocabulary of life. Every eye color, every scar, every heartbeat, every birth and death written in a biological alphabet, older than language itself. It is both beautiful and terrifying, because to read the code of life is to realize how easily it might one day be rewritten. The decades that follow become a quiet gold rush. Scientists race not for treasure, but for sequence dash. To decode the 3 billion letters that make a human being. They call it the Human Genome Project, a collaboration of nations, laboratories, and sleepless visionaries who believe that inside our cells lies not mystery, but meaning. It takes 13 years. 13 years to spell humanity. When the final sequence is read in 2003, the world celebrates. We have mapped ourselves. And like all explorers who reach the edge of the known world, we immediately ask ... What lies beyond? Soon, the boundaries blur. The scalpel is replaced by the sequence. Healing becomes editing. The future of medicine shifts from treating the body to rewriting its source code. Scientists learn to cut, copy, and paste genes, like paragraphs in a sacred text. They call it gene therapy. The first patients are children, born with immune systems that cannot defend them. The bubble boys. 1 injection, 1 modified virus carrying healthy DNA. And the immune system wakes like a sleeping god. The world watches in awe. For the first time, medicine doesn't just fight disease. It edits destiny, but with power comes unease. Because the same tool that can cure can also create. Parents begin asking questions. If we can erase disease, could we also choose intelligence, or beauty, or obedience? The old ethical lines blur like ink in water. Scientists speak of genes as tools, but governments hear weapons. And behind closed doors, pharmaceutical companies whisper about profit. The human genome, once sacred, becomes a market. In dim laboratories, new gods take shape. Machines that can read the genome in hours instead of years. What once filled libraries now fits on a chip. And then, in 2012, another spark, CRISPR, a bacterial defense mechanism reborn as the sharpest tool biology has ever known. It can cut DNA precisely, snip out disease, and stitch imperfection. It is so simple, so elegant, so terrifying, that it feels less like discovery and more like revelation. With CRISPR, humanity becomes the editor of evolution, no longer readers of the code, but its authors. For a while, it feels like salvation. Sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, all once considered life sentences, are suddenly negotiable. But then someone crosses the line. A scientist in China edits embryos, not to cure but to enhance. 2 twin girls born with altered DNA. The world recoils. We have stepped into the future without remembering to bring our conscience. In hospitals around the world, genetic counselors now speak softly to expectant parents. Your child, they say, may carry a mutation, a typo in the code. Would you like to know? Would you like to change it? Would you like to decide who your child becomes before they take their first breath? The conversation that began with healing has turned into one about control. And control, history reminds us, is never purely human. Meanwhile, in another corner of the world, a farmer plants modified seeds, crops designed to resist drought, pests, and time itself. The same technology that edits humans is editing the earth. DNA flows across species like wind. Tomatoes glow with fish genes. Corn carries the immunity of bacteria. The planet itself becomes a laboratory, and the line between natural and man-made grows thinner every harvest. But there is wonder here too, because in decoding life, we are rediscovering its poetry. Scientists find genes that turn on and off like light switches, tiny rhythms choreographing existence. They discover that trauma can echo through generations, that memory leaves fingerprints on DNA. A grandmother's famine becomes her grandchild's metabolism. A father's stress reshapes a son's mind. We don't just inherit genes, we inherit experience. And in that realization, biology becomes biography. Medicine evolves again. Doctors no longer prescribe for the average patient. They prescribe for you. Your DNA determines your treatment, your risks, your future. It's called precision medicine, personalized healing written in your own code. But it also means that your genome, once private, now exists in databases, in labs, in clouds. The essence of who you are, stored, scanned, and sold. The miracle of decoding life comes with a quiet price. Nothing is secret anymore. And yet, the deeper we read into the code, the stranger it becomes. DNA is not static. It dances. It learns. It mutates, adapts, evolves. Even as we map it, it rewrites itself. Perhaps the greatest illusion of the genetic age is that we ever truly understood what we were touching, that we could control something that has always controlled us. In a sterile room somewhere, a scientist watches strands of DNA glow under ultraviolet light. Each one is a story, a lineage, a history of survival written across billions of years. And as she studies it, she realizes something humbling. For all our editing, our precision, our progress, the genome doesn't need us. It will outlive us. It will remember us. It will carry our fingerprints in every mutation we leave behind. So we keep going, sequencing, editing, imagining, because that's what humans do. We can't help but turn mystery into machinery, even when the machinery begins to look a lot like us. The double helix still spins quietly inside every living thing. It doesn't care about ethics or progress or profit. It just wants to live. And maybe so do we. We have walked from bloodletting to biogenetics, from leeches to logic, from prayer to precision. And yet, every step has brought us back to the same question. What does it mean to heal? To be whole? To be human when we can edit the very meaning of humanity? The future is no longer a prophecy. It's a sequence. And we are holding the pen. There was a time when a doctor's hands were the only instruments that mattered, a time when healing meant touch, the warmth of skin, the pressure of a pulse. That time is gone. Now the machines are listening. It begins with a hum, faint, sterile, precise, a rhythm that doesn't belong to the heart, but mimics it perfectly. Somewhere, a monitor beeps in place of a heartbeat. Somewhere else, a mechanical valve whispers where lungs once sighed. The human body has entered its next translation, from blood and bone to data and design. After the genetic age, the frontier shifted again. Medicine no longer sought just to understand life. It began to simulate it. The first X-rays showed us bones as white shadows. Then came CT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, machines peeling back the layers of flesh without a single incision. For the first time in history, we could look inside ourselves while still alive. It was more than progress. It was prophecy. The body had become transparent. And once something can be seen, it can be copied. Once copied, it can be built. In the 20th century's closing years, engineers and surgeons began to collaborate. A new alliance between flesh and circuit. Pacemakers pulsed in damaged hearts. Cochlear implants turned silence into sound. Artificial hips, knees, and corneas restored the old language of movement. For every broken part, a new machine. For every silence, a new signal. The line between human and hardware blurred quietly, not with a shout, but with a steady, mechanical breath. A man with a pacemaker isn't less human. He's updated. A woman with a prosthetic arm can paint, lift, dance. Her movements read by sensors, translated by microcurrents, as if her nerves have learned a new alphabet. Technology didn't just repair the body. It extended it, improved it, reimagined it. But every new limb, every artificial organ, posed the same quiet question. How much of you can be replaced before you stop being you? In the age of the digital body, hospitals become data centers. The patient becomes a profile. Charts turn into code, blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation. Numbers dancing across glowing screens. The doctor no longer holds your wrist. He holds your data. Diagnosis comes from algorithms now. Machines trained on millions of past patients, calculating the probabilities of your pain. Medicine has become predictive. Before you feel the symptom, the system already knows. Before you bleed, it has already typed the report. It sounds miraculous, but somewhere in the miracle, something human begins to fade. A nurse sits beside a bed, typing instead of touching. A surgeon studies a 3D model instead of a beating organ. A patient speaks, but the doctor's eyes stay fixed on a screen. We are still alive, but increasingly translated, rendered, interpreted through code. And yet, the machines keep learning. Deep neural networks read X-rays better than radiologists. AI can detect cancers invisible to human eyes. Robots perform surgery steadier than any surgeon could. A robotic arm cuts, stitches, cauterizes, guided by a surgeon's fingers miles away. A brain-computer interface lets paralyzed patients move a cursor with thought alone. The mind, once trapped, now communicates through electric whispers. It is no longer man versus machine. It is man becoming machine. The new oath of medicine isn't do no harm, it's do no lag. The promise is breathtaking. To conquer disease, extend life, outthink death itself. But the danger lies beneath the circuitry, in the illusion that precision means understanding. data can describe you perfectly and still never know who you are. A monitor can track your pulse, but not your fear. A scan can reveal a tumor, but not the quiet hope beneath your ribs. Even as we make the body legible, the soul remains unreadable. Still, the digital body evolves. Nanobots swim through bloodstreams, repairing tissue cell by cell. Smart pills record their own journey through the intestines. Wearables whisper statistics to your phone. Heart rate, sleep depth, oxygen, mood. The doctor lives in your pocket now. The hospital fits on your wrist. Every breath becomes a number. Every number becomes a warning. Every warning becomes an ad. And in this loop, the oldest fear returns. That to be known completely is to be owned completely. Meanwhile, on the horizon, biotechnology merges with artificial intelligence. Synthetic organs are 3D printed. Digital twins, perfect simulations of your body, are used to test drugs, surgeries, outcomes. Before you are treated, your copy is treated first. If the copy survives, you get the real dose. Somewhere between efficiency and empathy, the definition of patient begins to change. You are no longer just a person. You are a data set, a version of you running quietly in a computer's memory, deciding how you will live and maybe how you will die. But the digital body doesn't only live in hospitals. It's in social media feeds, fitness apps, genetic databases. Every selfie, every heartbeat logged adds to the archive of you. We used to pray for immortality. Now we upload it. One scan, one statistic, one backup at a time. Our lives have become diagnostics, and our ghosts, they'll be stored in the cloud. Some see salvation in this, others see a cage. Because when the body becomes data, it becomes editable. And what's editable can be exploited. Insurance companies reading genomes, employers scanning biometrics, governments tracing steps and breaths, surveillance disguised as care. The same technology that saves us also watches us. The same sensors that monitor the sick can control the healthy. In the digital age, healing and power share the same circuitry. And yet, in all this circuitry, there's still a heartbeat. A surgeon removes a tumor guided by augmented reality. A child hears her mother's voice through a bionic ear. A man sees his wife for the first time through an artificial cornea. Moments that remind us the machine is not the miracle. We are. Because every wire, every code, every circuit was born from a single human impulse. To survive, to feel, to stay connected just a little longer. Somewhere, a robotic heart beats on its own. No body attached. Just rhythm, steady and perfect. It's meant to simulate life. But in the silence that follows, you can't help but wonder. If perfection means no failure, does it also mean no feeling? We have reached a strange era where to heal is to merge, to upgrade, to become both organic and algorithmic. You've just traveled through centuries, from plague carts to laboratories, from superstition to science, from the edge of death to the fragile miracle of being here right now. If you're still awake, thank you for keeping me company tonight. And if you've already drifted off somewhere between bloodletting and penicillin, then maybe that's exactly where you were meant to go. Every story of medicine, at its heart, is a story about care. Not the kind found in textbooks or machines, but in small human moments. A hand on a forehead, a whisper in the dark, a promise that tomorrow might be better. So close your eyes. Let the centuries settle. You've seen enough for one night. The fires have burned out, the wards are quiet, and the healers have finally gone to sleep. Now it's your turn. This was what medieval doctors really did to cure you. Thank you for listening, for breathing, for being part of the story. Good night, traveler. May your mind rest, your body mend, and your dreams be kind.